Recently, Dinesh D'Souza released 2000 Mules, a film that alleges that the 2020 election was fraudulent and that geotracking software for cell phones, along with video evidence, proves nefarious ballot stuffing by approximately 2,000 different people. If these allegations are true, we should seriously look into it. But is this evidence presented really the smoking gun it claims to be?
Honey, have you seen my Q shirt?
We are a year and a half removed from the 2020 election, and there is still doubt on the results. Well, by some, mostly from the right side of the aisle, fueled by my pillow guy and that other guy. And though nearly 100 court cases challenging the results in some fashion, with nearly all of them being dismissed without sufficient evidence, or had falsified claims, or outright ruled against based on merits, or even withdrawn from complainant's counsel, people still can't accept the 2020 results.
No, no, no!
Recently, famed Republican provocateur Dinesh D'Souza released his newest film, 2000 Mules. And in collaboration with the data collected by True the Vote organization, D'Souza painstakingly threads the information into a well-crafted documentary. If you haven't seen the film, nor have any desire to, here's the summary. Geotracking technology for cell phones was collected that tracked individual movement during the lead up to the 2020 election in 5 battleground states. Coupled with official state video, D'Souza posits that there was egregious ballot harvesting, ballot stuffing, vote tampering, and illegal ballots that eventually led to the victory for Joe Biden. If you've already seen the movie or intend to, what is presented is very compelling and extremely disconcerting. Let's look at these claims to find out if they have any merit. Let's start off with the creators of the movie and the origins of the data. Voting integrity should always be a bipartisan endeavor. No matter one's political ideology, trusting the voting process only strengthens democracy. And though this film alludes to being an objective investigation, the root of it most definitely is not. D'Souza has a long history of right-leaning rhetoric, and his earlier films are very much Republican propaganda because, let's face it, he's a filmmaker. And like all of us, he wants to be successful and make bank. And he's found his niche audience. The True the Vote nonprofit organization assisted in providing the geo-tracking data. This organization was created by conservative influencer Catherine Engelbrecht and was spawned from the King Street Patriots, which was a creation from the conservative Tea Party. Also, the experts showcased in this film that discuss the findings are radio hosts from Salem Media Group, which is America's leading multimedia company specializing in Christian and conservative content. So, from the onset, it doesn't appear that it is objective at all. And this film looks to follow in the same biased narrative as D'Souza's previous films. However, in an effort not to fall victim to the genetic fallacy, let's take an honest look at the claims and scrutinize the hell out of them. Because if they can hold up to any reasonable shadow of doubt, then we do have a serious problem. Oh, in this clip,
together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics
is taken completely out of context. Okay, so let's tackle the main claim of the cell phone geo-targeting software, the cell phone tower pinging locations, and the suspicious activity centered around Democratic nonprofit locations and ballot drop boxes in those 5 key states of Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, which ultimately decided the presidential election. This data was the same technology used to identify those involved with the January 6th Capitol riot, and it was used in accordance with geofence warrants to arrest thousands of 2020 summer rioters following George Floyd's death as well. So, With its success in placing people in certain areas, it has to be accurate in this case, right?
Yes or no?
I have no idea. I'm gonna use my pass.
He's gonna use his pass.
It's accurate when there is a suspect already. It can then verify alleged location of illegal activity. In the case of 2000 Mules, there are no suspects to start with. They do, however, have anonymous informants who claim they were paid and explain the activity in which they were involved with, but let's get to them later. Without a starting point of suspects, the data was filtered in order to try and isolate these cell phone markers and track the activity. They claim that patterns of life or normal day-to-day movement was eliminated because obviously people live, work, or go to school in these areas, and it's the outliers that bounce between ballot boxes and these nonprofits that spark concern. In some cases, these markers make stops or pass by both ballot boxes and nonprofits multiple times within short time periods. The issue I have with this is not all data can accurately be filtered out. Cab, Uber, or other transport and delivery drivers can't be accounted for. Due to COVID, food and grocery deliveries were more common, and the location of the ballot boxes and nonprofits are mostly in high traffic areas where thousands of people go near every day. And it must be recognized that with a crucial election on the horizon, those nonprofits, mostly in Democratic strongholds, increased staff and volunteers. There was also a huge push in these areas for get out and vote movements and other political groups increasing their efforts. All people who would normally not be in these areas, but now have a legitimate and valid purpose to be there. That doesn't necessarily mean anything nefarious was going on. The pinpoint accuracy claims that assert certainty of exact location are a small stretch, but significant enough to mention. These pings are accurate up to a few meters, meaning if someone stops 12 to 15 feet from a ballot box to cross the street, or a car stopped within that same distance from a nonprofit waiting on a green light, it absolutely puts them in the vicinity, but not at the specified location. So all of a sudden, that 2,000 number of people they're set on has some significant enough doubt to question the validity of that claim. And if scrutinized and investigated even further, you could really start to eliminate many, if not most of them, from suspicion. But there is video evidence in cooperation with those markers that show numerous people being tracked, putting multiple ballots in these ballot boxes. And they occur all throughout the day, night, and even early morning. Well, the time thing can be construed as questionable, yes, especially dropping off ballots at 3 in the morning, but these boxes are there for that specific reason, to have 24-hour availability. And after official review by investigating authorities, the videos alone do not convey any illegal activity. And it's interesting to note that though there are claims that individuals are visiting multiple ballot boxes and nonprofits, which are in fact tracked via the geotargeting, there is no video evidence that shows the same person at different boxes, or even returning to the same ballot box. The video evidence exclusively shows isolated events of one person with multiple ballots. Before we get to the why, it's important to know that True the Vote and D'Souza both admit there is no way of telling who those ballots were cast for. It's only assumed that they were for Joe Biden. The big question is, why are these people on video putting multiple ballots in these ballot boxes?
Thank you!
Well, in these states, it is actually legal to have family members or a designated person deliver or mail in another person's ballot. In fact, one of the videos of a man in Gwinnett County, Georgia, shown putting in 5 different ballots in the box was investigated by authorities. And come to find out, those ballots were his wife's, and 2 adult children, which is all perfectly legal. In other cases, folks that are elderly, handicapped, or unable to get to a ballot box or mail it in can designate persons not within family to collect and deliver their ballot. Even groups of office workers can allow one person to drop off ballots with their consent, depending on the state. Whether you agree with it or not, that is all still perfectly legal.
I'll allow it.
One of the major claims in the movie are of these mules, or people who are paid to collect and deliver these ballots in mass, known as ballot harvesting. And yes, this activity is absolutely illegal. You cannot collect money to be a courier of ballots. But there's a caveat to that. Though ballot harvesting itself is illegal, the ballots are not.
In the quiet words of the Virgin Mary, come again.
The ballots are not. So even if the claims that 2,000 people were paid to collect and deposit these ballots were true, the votes still count.
Approved!
They're not disregarded, and they go through the same validation of all mail-in ballots at the processing centers. They are omitted or require in-person verification if they have tampered envelopes or missing signatures, damaged in any way, or have duplicate barcodes, because it is still one person, one vote. There are safeguards to protect against duplicate ballots, fraudulent ballots, and any other invalid ballot stuffing fear. And as far as the ballot harvesting portrayed in the movie goes, there isn't a clear connection of money exchange, nor any evidence of where that money originates from. The informants who claim to have been paid have their identity kept secret. And like any other anonymous source from other news media, that information should be held with a bit of skepticism. And this is only exacerbated because the FBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and other state departments have reached out to True the Vote for their data to investigate these claims of illegal activity, only to be denied. These departments have recently requested a subpoena so that they can use their findings to identify and prosecute any illegal election fraud. So the question begs, if voter integrity is their ultimate goal, and they're sitting on the mother lode of evidence, why not allow an official investigation that could validate their claims? Or it could be that it would completely discredit them, because Catherine Engelbrecht, its founder and president, have already presented many of these claims, including the ones in the movie, to the courts, and they have all been dismissed due to lack of evidence. There are other nuances within the movie that try to paint a nefarious strategy, like people wearing gloves to protect fingerprints, but that can be explained with the fear of COVID at its peak, or it being cold outside. Because some of the video was from the Georgia runoff election in January of 2021 and not the 2020 general election. It's a lot to take in, but let's look at it from a criminal's perspective. If an elaborate scheme to flood the 2020 election with fraudulent votes was the goal, you would do everything to mitigate getting caught or providing an electronic or paper trail. Ballot boxes are specifically placed in high traffic and normally surveilled areas. And mail-in ballots can be mailed from anywhere. Your home, the outbox at the office, numerous postal drop boxes. I mean, all of these areas are less risky and much easier to stay covert. So with the number of mules being claimed in dispute, a reasonable expectation of increase in poll volunteers, states allowing for multiple ballot delivery, no video evidence of the same person at different locations, no valid evidence of money exchange outside of anonymous claims, no way to tell who those ballots were for, ballots being legal whether they were illegally harvested or not, the same ballot validation processing in place, many of those claims already being presented and dismissed in court, and the lack of cooperation with the authorities by True the Vote to actually expose illegal activity of these claims, all lead to this being a very emotionally manipulative, well-crafted movie that is filled with nothing but speculation, assumptions, and hypotheticals.
This is worthless.
It's less than worthless, my boy.
But after 1 million views so far, you go get your paper, D'Souza. There's too much doubt about 2,000 Mules to accept its claims as true. It is definitely not the smoking gun many on the right claim it to be. Unfortunately, voter fraud does happen. And to this date, there have been over 400 isolated incidences by both parties throughout the US, which have been identified and convicted. But it's not enough to overturn the election. And like him or not, and personally I don't, Joe Biden won a fair and valid election.